Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Failing to agree an EU withdrawal deal could lead to a sharp rise in rubbish being sent to landfill. That's according to a number of council documents seen by the BBC. Much of it could end up in the north of England. At the moment, millions of tonnes of our domestic waste is sent to Europe to be converted into energy, but disruption resulting from a no-deal Brexit could make that trade uneconomical. Councils say that car parks might have to be turned into waste facilities and warn that people might start dumping rubbish in streets and gardens. Our economics editor, Faisal Islam, reports.
Processing household rubbish, in this case near Bristol. It is London's black bin bags being churned and mashed and sorted before being used as a fuel to generate energy. Just 2 decades ago, 4/5 of this household waste used to be buried in the ground in landfill, rather bad for the environment. No longer, now it's just 1/5, as government policies designed to meet EU targets mean it's either turned into energy, as it is here, or recycled. But the industry says no-deal Brexit will at least temporarily reverse some of that progress.
If we leave with a no-deal Brexit in October, then yes, we will be moving more material, we think, to landfill. But there are some sites in the UK that have been mothballed because we've been moving away from landfill and haven't needed them, that could be brought back into operation relatively quickly.
The problem, across the United Kingdom, there simply aren't enough of these facilities. These industry concerns and more are shared by councils, many of whose internal preparations for a worst-case scenario no-deal Brexit, seen by the BBC, detailed plans to try to deal with immediate disruption to waste services. Bin bags and wheelie bins are being stockpiled. In one case, even new bin lorries were ordered to beat the earlier Brexit deadline. Braintree Council, for example, in April, listed among its high risks the knock-on effect of transport and fuel problems, that it might have to consider reducing allocations of sacks per household to eke out supplies. In a Brexit impact assessment, Sevenoaks Council mentions that a park and ride could be used as a temporary site for waste, and road congestion leading to late or no collections will impact on the community stockpiling waste in gardens or streets. Southampton Council listed the risk that delays or blockages on waste export could result in recycling banks and waste transfer stations becoming full and potentially closing, and one response mentioned by its contractor was diversion to landfill. That's the issue causing the biggest headache. It's not just recycling. Ordinary household waste is exported on ships like this, heading from Southampton to Sweden. Over 3 million tonnes of household rubbish directly. 600 ships worth of your black bin bag rubbish gets put into those white cubes, put on ships like this to be sent to the European Union. It's a system that's built up over decades in order to limit the growth of landfill in the UK. Just who would have thought that Brexit, and no deal in particular, could impact where our rubbish goes? The government did gain recognition for UK waste to be continued to be exported with individual EU countries, but the issue here arises if there is general port congestion and, as has already occurred, a general slide in the value of sterling, making the trade uneconomic.
A lot of waste comes out of the southeast. We have very little landfill capacity there. Most of our landfill capacity is further north, up in the Midlands, north of England. So it would have to start being trucked from the ports up to those landfill spaces up further up north. Now, for the bigger operators,
the south of England's rubbish, which currently gets exported,
would then have to go. If we're not able to export it, the only other option for this waste that goes to the Netherlands to power the Amsterdam Arena and all of that, that will have to be shipped up north and stuck in a hole in the ground.
For some, this is the very point of Brexit, freedom from EU rules, targets and standards. The government has made some progress here, but the impact of no deal could yet be felt in where the nation's bin bags end up.
And Faisal's with me now. Faisal, over the last few days you've looked at food, oil and now waste. What lesson do you draw from all of this?
So we're really used, aren't we, to the idea that Airbus or the car manufacturers, that they have parts that fly around the whole of Europe and we're reliant on that. I think what's quite stark from the documents I've seen is how our local public services also rely on those supply chains that stretch in to the European Union, and so there is a potential impact from Brexit and from a no-deal Brexit. But the government was on top of this. They did enable the permissions that weren't certain with the European Union to get this going. The Environment Agency have told us we are encouraging businesses who export waste to consider and continue to plan alternative options in case of disruption at borders. The question, where does this waste go? Does it stay at the ports? Does it go to the north of England? Or does it end up in landfill? Tens of millions of costs for that.
Faisal, thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, among the possible consequences of a no-deal Brexit is the risk of civil unrest and food shortages, according to the government's Operation Yellowhammer report that was leaked at the weekend. Our Scotland correspondent Kieran Jenkins has been speaking to Britain's second largest police force about their preparations in the event of no deal. Kieran.
Well, earlier this week, the government sort of downplayed, didn't it, its own no-deal scenarios that were leaked, including the possibility of civil unrest. Well, I can tell you that police forces seem to be preparing for exactly that. I've been speaking to Police Scotland's Deputy Chief Constable, and he says while there's no intelligence pointing to a specific threat of unrest, however unlikely they think it might be, they want to be ready for it, for scenarios including the need to deploy officers to Northern Ireland should there be an emergency there. They want to be ready for the possibility of sectarian violence here in Scotland as a result, fuel shortages and public disorder. What constitutes disorder? Are you talking about rioting? Are you talking about looting? Are these things that you have actively prepared for?
At the very extreme end of the spectrum, I think those things are unlikely, but of course we have to plan for those things happening in extremis and by a very small number of people. The vast majority of people will just want to go out and protest.
Public disorder at this point, of course, is not something that police can really accurately predict, but there are other security impacts that they absolutely can predict in the event of no deal. Overnight, in a no deal situation, the UK would be disconnected. It would be booted off a series of crucial EU security databases and law enforcement measures that have become so central to so many UK police force investigations.
Well, there's a number of investigative tools that potentially might be lost if there's no bilateral agreements with each of the individual countries to mitigate their loss.
It will have an effect, though, on your ability to be operationally successful.
If we lose those tools, absolutely.
As we stand here right now, are there alternative arrangements in place to replace those tools that you will lose?
For some of them, yes, and for some of them, no.
Well, the UK government is trying against the clock now to put together some sort of fallback for these measures under a no deal, but on the whole, these are sophisticated EU security networks that you're either in or you're out. And Ireland's most senior police officer put it pretty bluntly today when he said that even if there are some new arrangements, it is not going to be the same, and in the event of no deal, 60 years of policing cooperation with the UK, he says, will fall away.
Kieran Jenkins.